my name is Irene, and in this video I would like to do a little demonstration of the process or workflow of using model in place component to create custom built-ins for an interior space. So let's get to it. Alright, so we have returned to our little retail space, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to be using model in place component to fill in the different built-ins or custom built-ins that we would have for this project. So what are those custom built-ins going to be? Well, number one is going to be this guy here, which is my basically pay area. I also want to have here an area that serves as both storage and display. So basically I want to have base cabinets with a countertop so you can kind of like hide things away. But then I also want to have above that maybe some shelving to display some things. I also want to have some more traditional shelving display here. And then finally here, I want to have some kind of display for like a clothing rack, maybe something that requires interacting with the architectural elements of the building. So there's going to be a little bit of everything in this project. One thing that I want to clarify is that I don't think in any video I have said what this retail space is going to be selling. And this is on purpose. I don't want somebody to see this video and be like, well, I'm designing a clothing store, so these videos are not going to be good for me. Or somebody saying, I'm designing a place that is going to be selling food, so these video is not for me. The idea is that, again, I want to do a little bit of everything. So no matter what is it that you're designing, you will be able to see an example here. The other thing that I want to put out of the way right now as a disclaimer is please do not judge my design choices. When I do these kind of examples, a lot of my projects end up looking a little bit like a salad. And the main reason for it is because I try as many different things as possible, which sometimes can result in the overall style of a space looking a little bit insane. So please don't come at me for my design choices. These are not the choices that I would normally make. This is more for the intents and purposes of the video. And then finally, the other custom build that I'm going to be modeling is going to be a little like custom vanity here for this bathroom. So whenever I'm designing custom builds, obviously I would start with inspiration. So I have a couple of images that I am planning to use as inspiration for this project. Obviously, like I will tweak them a little bit. You know, ideally you probably have done some sketches on the side and you have a solid idea of how you want your model to look. I'm going to start easy with this pay area here. And what I like to do for setup is start by creating a section box that will make it easier for me to kind of like move around the model if I need to. Because let's say that I need to look at a detail here, but this wall keeps on getting in my way. Once you are inside the model in place component, you can't interact with your section box or with the building in general, which can make it a little bit annoying. So what I like to do is I like to set this up before I start modeling. So what I'm going to do here is on my 3D view, on my properties, I'm going to come here to my extent and to my section box, and I'm going to turn it on. I cannot see it because I think I have it hidden from the last time that I was working in my model. So I'm going to come down here to my display options to the little ball that is going to reveal hidden elements, and there is my section box. See? So basically what I want to do now is I want to bring the section box in as much as necessary so I get rid of the walls. I don't want to get completely right next to the area that I'm modeling. I want to give it a little bit of breathing room so that it's a little bit easier for me to work. Oh, no, that's too close. See, like that to me, it's too close for comfort. What if I want to project my model a little bit? So there you go. That's a little bit more space. And then I don't need to drop this guy because my ceiling and my roof are already hidden. And I do actually want to be able to see these lighting fixtures here. So I'm going to turn this back off, and there you go. That is going to make it much easier for me to work in developing my model. Okay. So that's step one. Step two is that we are going to set up our model in place component. So we're going to go to our architecture tab, components, and then I'm going to go model in place. So you can watch my previous videos introducing to model in place component, but the very first thing that I want to do here is I want to set up the category of my model. And again, if you have a model that is going to contain multiple things, keep in mind that you basically want to think about like, okay, but what is the thing overall? The other thing is breaking my model in place components in parts. So I'm not creating a single model in place component that is going to contain all of my built-ins in the project. Instead, I'm going to do do a model in place component for each built-in. So the pay area is going to be one, the storage behind the pay area is going to be another model in place component, the wall display, the clothing display, and the bathroom vanity, each of them is going to be their own model in place component. That way, if I need to move them or if I need to edit them, I don't need to go into like a whole massive thing that contains everything. So I'm going to choose my category to be casework. Again, casework is the word that is used in Revit to define anything from like custom built-ins, cabinetry, woodwork, however you refer to it professionally, it's all the same. So I'm going to choose here casework and I'm going to go okay. Now the name of this casework is going to be, let's call it big desk. There you go. Okay. All right. So we are ready to go. You can see here that my family is in the category casework. Good stuff. So I've used my section box to clear the area that I'm going to be working with. I've chosen my model in place component. I've chosen my category. The next thing is going to be obviously getting your reference images. If you've done sketches, whatever it is that you're going to be working with. Again, I'm not super concerned with my design choices in this video, so please don't judge me. I'm just going to be going from images. I have two images that I'm going to be using as references here. The first one is this guy over here. I kind of really like about this, the rounding on the edges, and I kind of like this like cut on the geometry for like a little bit of additional display. I think that's kind of cute. And then the other inspiration image that I have is going to be this one here, which is, I kind of like the levels and it seems to have like some behind space. This one doesn't have space for what I would consider like a computer or a pay station or something like that. So again, I'm going to do a little bit of a hybrid between the two of them. So I think that mainly the shape is going to be something like this, but then maybe instead of just having this display being solid like this, maybe the display is more shelves like this one here. And then maybe instead of having these kind of like slatted or timber effect just on this side here, maybe I have it in both sides. I also kind of like the inlay detail of this wood element here. So again, I'm going to do a little bit of a hybrid between the two of them. So what I am going to do now is, with that in mind, I want to set up the views that I'm going to be working with, right? So in one of my previous videos, I mentioned that usually when I'm working with model in place components, I will work with a 3D view and a 2D view. So like the 2D view could be an elevation, it could be a floor plan, it can be something like that. In this case, I'm going to be working with a floor plan. So this is really, really important. Don't just assume that your starting work plane should always be the floor plan. That is kind of like our brains always want to do that, but that doesn't need to be the case. If you're working with something that is, let's say, wall mounted, then maybe the ideal work plane to start from is the wall that the thing goes mounted on. Because if you think about it, that is the plane that is defining the main position of your millwork. So don't just assume that your starting point should always be the floor. Sometimes it's easier to start from the ceiling, to start from the walls, okay? But in this case, I'm going to go with the floor plan. So I'm going to open my floor plan view and I'm going to put them side to side. So that way, once again, I can see how my project is progressing as I model it. And I can see like how things interact with each other. Okay. So what we're going to be doing here is, again, these lines that I created were mostly so I could understand the proportions of space that I need, but it doesn't necessarily mean that these are going to be exactly the final dimensions. I can change my mind as I'm modeling. That's part of the beauty of the modeling process. So don't be afraid of, trying different things. So what I want to do here is I want to start from the floor plan. And again, if we pull back our image, what we want to do here is we want to deconstruct this geometry. We want to see like, what are the elements that make it and like, how do we want to recreate those elements? So basically what we have here is three forms. At least that's the way that I'm perceiving it. We have this main pill shape extrusion. We have the cylinder extrusion here, and then we have this other kind of pill shape extrusion that is interacting with both the cylinder and the taller pill, right? So that's going to be my starting point. That is the first thing that I want to model here, just these three big forms. So because they have different heights, each of them is going to be an extrusion. So I'm going to start with an extrusion here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle. And let's say I'm going to start just by drawing like yaying it, basically. Like I just want it to be a size. And then what I can do here is once I've done this, I can start kind of like checking with my temporary dimensions how much room we're working with. So see, for example, if I select this line, see here it's telling me that I have 8 inches. So if this is going to be that secondary display, basically like what we have here, you kind of have to think about like, is 8 inches enough? Do I want more? Do I want less? I think 8 inches is enough. 6 inches would be too little for me. 8 inches is about 20 centimeters for my metric users. I've seen the comments telling me to work in metric. Don't worry, I will work in other projects in metric. It's just that to me at this point, it's easier to work in inches. So 8 inches, about 20 centimeters. That sounds good. You know what? I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So if you want to change a dimension, you can come to the temporary dimension. See, so I can click on this number and say I want it to be 6 inches, enter, and it's actually going to shift the line. I can also, like, if I want to see how much is this total depth, I can also adjust my temporary dimensions. So I can click and drag this guy and put it here. And see, now that's telling me like, okay, that's 2 feet. You know what? That's actually what I want. So I'm going to leave it like that. So we have 2 feet. We have 2 feet is about 600 millimeters, 60 centimeters. 6 inches is about 15 centimeters. That looks good to me. Now, what about the width? Let's see what we're working with the width. If I look at my reference image, yeah, it looks like this. So it's kind of like center where the circle is. So I'm not going to be very worried with the like end of my pill here for the time being. So if we said this is 30 inches, so maybe I want to put this 15 inches from the edge. So I'm kind of trying to find the center of what will be my circle. This is right now 12 plus 5, 17 inches. Ooh, we're almost there. We said that we wanted it to be 15 inches. There you go. That could be my placement. And then if I want to know what is the total length of this area, I can just stretch my temporary dimension. And that's going to be 3 feet, 9 inches. That is 900, 1,000. It's a little bit over a meter, which I think is good enough for like a little pay area. So, okay, that's going to be, let's say that that's going to be my begin outline for my shape. But as we said, this is a pill shape. That means that it needs to be rounded on the edges. And one quick and easy way that you can round your geometry is by using the fillet arc. So you can only use this if you already have 2 lines that you can fillet together. So I can click on this guy, and then I can select how big or small I want that little arc to be. Right now, it should be 12 inches because if I want it to be a perfect pill, then it has to be half of, like my length, we said that it was 2 feet, 600 millimeters. So if I want that perfect half circle, each of these fillets has to be half of that dimension. So that would be 12 inches, or that would be 300 millimeters. So I like to just put them so they are there, and then I will manually adjust the number. See, so I do something like this, put it there, and then again, see, like 6 is too small, so I can go here 12, and I'm just gonna adjust quickly the other ones. You're gonna get this warning because it's basically telling you, hey, before we had arc, line, arc. With the new dimension that you're giving me, I can only have arc, arc. So it's basically telling you, hey, I'm gonna have to delete that line in between. So keep in mind, getting warning signs or error messages is not inherently bad. You just need to read them and see what Revit is telling you that is going on. So in this case, this is actually exactly what I want. Yeah, delete those elements. Perfect, we're happy. Okay, so 12 inches. And 12 inches again. One thing that I think I have mentioned before, but I will mention it again, is that keep in mind that like I am working with inches, basically imperial, but one of the things that I like the most about Revit is that you can actually input whatever unitary value you need. So for example, if let's say that the fabricator of this cabinet is from Europe, and thus they are working with metric, even if the project is like, I'm in Canada, so like the project is in Canada and the project overall is in inches, I could come here and say like, again, 2 feet is about 600 millimeters. I could come here and say like, oh yeah, this width is actually supposed to be 700 millimeters, enter. And Revit will automatically do the conversion for you. Now, keep in mind, there is no such thing as a one-to-one conversion from metric to imperial. There is always rounding that needs to be done. So keep in mind that if you input metric while working in imperial, you're going to get a weird number. And the same thing is going to happen if you work the other way around. If you're working in metric and let's say you're bringing in a product that is in imperial, when you do the conversion, it's going to give you a weird number. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to do that because I don't actually want it. And then finally, the last thing that I'm going to do before I am done with my extrusion is tell Revit how high I want that extrusion to be, how tall do I want that countertop to be. So basically, when we're talking about countertop, the standard height would be 36 inches, 3 feet, 900 millimeters. In this case, because I basically want to have kind of like a counter and then a little bit taller so it will hide kind of like the pay area if I have a computer or something like that, I'm going to make it a little bit higher. So instead of 36 inches, maybe I make it 42 inches, right? So let's do that. And I'm going to go say yes. And there you go. That's my first shape. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. No problem. Awesome. We're doing great. All right, let's make our next extrusion. So our next extrusion, if we look at our reference, is going to be this circle here. I know that you can see these slats. I can see them as well. I'm ignoring them for the time being. Don't worry. We will get to them eventually. So I'm going to create another extrusion. This one is just going to be a circle. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw it again on my floor plan. This is already divided in half, so I can't quite tell where the exact number that I need should be here. So I'm just going to do it anywhere because I can always move the circle afterwards. So let's say I'm going to put it here, and basically I want it to come up to this corner. So see, that's the 15 that I was talking about earlier. Perfect. And then all I need to do is move it in. So basically this point is here. So I can go MV for move and pick it up and drop it there. Beautiful. Now, I'm not concerned about the fact that this guy's clipping into this guy. I am concerned about these weird little gap that we're getting here. So see, this is where we do revisions to our design. We do changes, we do updates, but I'm going to finish the circle here. For the height of this circle, again, if we look at the reference, this guy's a little bit further down. So let's say that this guy is going to be at actually 36 inches. So we're going to go 36 and we're going to go, okay, beautiful. Yeah, see how we see that there's no line here. So that is always a bad sign. You should never get these kind of geometry disappearing into other geometry. That's Revit's way of telling you hey, you have stuff clipping into each other. So immediately I'm making a mental note. I need to solve this, right? You should not just have that. And we will solve it. Don't worry about it. So I am going to, before I continue modeling, I actually want to solve this gap here, because if we see it from this side here, I don't like aesthetically how this looks. And also from a functional standpoint, I feel that that's where all the dust bunnies are going to gather. So another thing that you can do, if you remember, is you can always edit things after you have created them. So in this case here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on my geometry, and this is going to bring me back to the drawing of the profile. So now all I have to do is select this line here. Oh God, it's stretching it in a way that I don't like. Let me be more careful. MV maybe? Yes, there you go. That's better. And maybe I can put this guy here. Ooh, I don't like that either. What can I do about this? I may have to create an additional kind of little thing. So maybe this is not just a circle, but it has a little extension here. Yeah, that's going to be a better solution. So instead of fixing this guy, we're going to fix this guy here. And all I really need to do, or you know what, we're going to be lazy. We're not going to edit this guy, and instead we're just going to make another extrusion that is just this remaining space. And check it out, because I'm very, very lazy. We already have the height of 3 feet. Perfect. And what I can do is I can say that I want to pick lines. This is also why I like to use model lines to basically sketch what I want to do, because see, now I can do this. Now, obviously, this is not good to go because we have lines that are going beyond. Remember, the rules about your boundary is that it has to be a continuous closed loop. Here I have lines that are intersecting. I have lines that stop. So I'm going to use my trim command, which is this guy here, trim extend. Quickie trim. Beautiful. See? And when I do this, there you go. See, that guy's gonna fill in that gap. And again, we're gonna fix the way that all of these things are looking. But before we finish, we're gonna model our last guy, which is this element over here. So it's kind of another pill geometry that is just kind of clashing into the other two. So we're gonna do exactly the same thing. We're gonna do an extrusion, and we're gonna start with a rectangle. Oops, that's not a rectangle. With a rectangle. And I'm just gonna make it so it goes yeah, I don't need it to be crazier than that. And now I can decide where I want things to stop and end. Obviously, this guy should start, see, I don't want it to go past because then it's gonna clip through. So MV, I wanna make sure that this guy is exactly where basically the quad point of my circle is. There you go. And then how far do I want it to go? Again, if we look at this reference here, it looks like it's just a yay point. It doesn't seem to be the start of the circle or anything specific. So in my case here, let's see, if I pick this temporary dimension, let's do it based on how much shelf we would actually get. So let's say I'm going to put it here because this portion of the shelf is probably not going to be very useful. So right now we have, what is that? 18 inches of shelf? Let's round this to 18. So that would be 1 feet 6 inches. There you go. Good enough. And then again, I want these to be rounded so it creates that illusion that it is a pill shape. And if you remember, this one was 6 inches. So all I need to do is create a single fillet that is going to be 6 inches. 6. And again, it's telling me basically that it's going to have to delete that line that was there, which is fine. That's exactly what I want. There you go. Now, for the height of this guy, you can see that it is a little bit lower than this guy, and they all seem to be about the same amount of a drop. So if this guy was 42 and this guy was 36, let's say that this guy's going to be 30. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say 30. enter, and okay. All right, let's take a look at this on my 3D view. Okay, yeah, that's taking good shape. I actually may want this guy to be a little bit lower for drum. No, yes, I do want it to. See, a lot of times I'll have an idea in my head, and then I'll look at the 3D model, and I'm like, this guy could be different. So let's say that instead of 30 inches, let's just make it 24. So that's going to be 2 feet. About 600 millimeters. Yeah, I like those proportions. Now, before we move on, let's fix the interactions, or more like the lack of interaction between these geometries here. So we have several problems. Problem number one, this guy and this guy should look like they are a single geometry, and right now you can see that they are two. In one of my previous videos, I talked about the cut and join tools, so that is exactly what I am going to use to make sure that these guys are interacting properly. So I'm going to select these two guys, and I'm going to say I want them to be joined. And oh, you and you, there you go. See, so now those two guys are reading as a single object. I'm going to do the same thing between this guy and this guy. So click, there you go. That's reading much nicer. And then finally between this entire entity and this entity here. Beautiful. See, this is the kind of cleanliness that is expected of your modeling. No weird lines. Okay, gorgeous. I'm really liking the way that this is looking. Very nice. So now let's start adding some complexity to this geometry. So basically what we have here, how do I explain this? We have this texture here, this timbre effect. So there are two ways that you can do this kind of timbre effect in Revit. One way that you can do it is you can directly model the geometry. This is time consuming, I'm not going to lie to you, but it looks beautiful. It looks really, really nice. Option 2 would be to do it with materials. We haven't talked about materials at all. We will eventually get to materials, and then you will see how we can recreate these effects, because basically what happens is that these timbre, if you think about it from a construction standpoint, it's not like you are going to a carpenter with a gigantic log of wood and he's gonna carve these channels into the wood. That would be insanely expensive. I'm sure that there's projects where they do that, but that's unrealistic. Normally, this kind of effect is achieved by applying a finish to the surface. So to me, when it is just a finish, I usually rather do it with materials because it's easier, it's quicker, and it's still going to look fun. But for the sake of this exercise, I will make this cylinder here with that timbre effect just so you can see how you can do it yourself. So there's a couple ways that I could tackle this. Option 1 is that I can edit the existing cylinder. Option 2 is that I can model these as additional geometry and then just join it kind of the same way that I did with all of these guys. So what I am going to do next is we are going to add this detail of my timbering. So in this case here, I'm going to be modeling it just so we can see how we would do this. Now there's two ways that you can add these level of details. One option would be that you edit the actual geometry. So I go into the profile of this cylinder and I change it. Option 2 would be that you just model these additional elements and then join them kind of the same way that we created these cylinders. I'm going to choose the later just because it's going to be a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come back to my floor plan, and this is going to be another extrusion. Again, you're going to notice that 90% of the things that you do with modeling place components is just extrusions. It's just how you're doing them, how tall, and which direction. So I'm going to do here a little circle. And I'm going to start at this endpoint here. And what you want to pay attention to is the dimension. So what you're measuring when you're making this circle is the radius. So it's telling me my radius is 1/2 inch. That means the circle itself is 1 inch. I think that's a decent size. So I'm going to leave it there. Now for the height, I want it to be the same height that this guy was, which I think was 36. Yeah, I think it was 36. Yeah, it was 36. Perfect. And then what we are going to do here, the other thing that I'm going to do, you can kind of see it here a little bit, but you can see that there's kind of like a little bit of a recess in the display. I want to recreate that display. So what I want to do here is I don't want the cylinder to go all the way to the ground. So the way that I can fix that is, again, remember, I can select it and I can manually move it, but I want to control what that height is. So instead, what I can do is I can select the geometry and come here to the extrusion start and say where I want it to start. I don't want it to be 4 inches is too much. I want it to maybe be 1 inch reveal. Yeah, that's gonna be very nice. Perfect. Okay, so with that out of the way, what I'm gonna do now is I'm not gonna copy these guys because I'm gonna have to do like a million of them and it's gonna take 10,000 years and ain't nobody got time for this. So instead what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use array, because you have within Revit 2 kinds of arrays. You have linear arrays, but you also have radial arrays. So I'm gonna select this guy And I'm going to go to my array command, quickie AR. And basically what we're going to do this time is if you look on the left side, you're going to see that by default, you have set up a linear array. But what I want in this case is a radial array. So that is a circular array. Okay. And the other thing that you want to do is you want to consider how are you measuring the distance of the elements in your array. You basically have two types of array, a first and second and a first and last. In the first and second, you note the distance between items, but you do not know the total distance that they're going to take. So basically you know the position of the first, you know the position of the second, you know the distance between them, and you just want Revit to replicate that. In a first and last, you know the position of the first, you know the position of the last, and you want Revit to basically fill in the gap between them. Personally, I find it much easier to work with first and last, and that's what I'm going to be doing here. So what I'm going to do is, and another very important thing, pay attention to where the center of your array is. Right now, the center of my array is in the geometry, which means that basically the copies that I make are going to be within the circle. That makes no sense whatsoever. So basically, I'm going to do a couple changes here. Number one, I want it to be a first and last array. Number two, I want my center of rotation. I'm going to click here, place, so I can reselect that. And basically, I want to find the center of my circle, which I think is, it's not really. I think it's this one here. No, I think it's, I can always, no, this is tricky. So see, if I can't quite see where the center of my circle is, what I will do is I'm going to escape, and I'm going to come here and I am going to draw a model line from here to here. There you go. Oh, they're under the geometry. No worries. I can come here to my display settings where I have my visual style hidden line, and I'm going to temporarily switch it to wireframe. There you go. Now I can see my model line, and there you go. Now I can see that like intersection. That is where the center of my array is going to be. So there you go, AR, and we're going to say first and last, perfect. Placement of the center of my array is going to be here, perfect. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click here to pick it up where this first guy is. And now I'm going to bring it all the way here. You may be like, well, why don't you just put it there? And the reason for that is because basically I want an even spacing. And if I put it here, I would basically have to like figure out what is that radius when converted to this radius. Too much complication. I'd rather put it here and delete the extra ones. It's going to be just, it makes more sense in my head. So I'm going to place it here. Now it's giving me 3, which means 1, 2, 3. We need more. So let's go 30. That makes more sense. There you go. Now it is telling me that basically one of the copies that I'm making is landing where there is already a guy. Oh no, identical geometry, performance. Yeah, it's basically telling me I have a lot of copies. Don't worry, this is fine. It is what it is. So, okay, that's fine. 30 is not enough. There's a gap between them. So we're going to have to increase this number, maybe 50. What I want to avoid is this. Overlap is not good because then again, it basically means that in reality, your slats would go into each other. We don't want that. So maybe 45, 47, 48. And that looks as perfect as it's going to get for me. Maybe 49. Let's be greedy. No, see, 49 is giving me a little bit of overlap. 48, perfect. Okay, cool. So the reason that I do it that way is because now I can just come here and say, okay, oh, Jesus Christ. I can just come here and say, okay, I'm going to mirror that. So I'm going to mirror it. I want to make a copy of it, and I'm going to select this axis. And bam. Now that should be fine. We're going to remove the constraints. It's basically telling me when you're mirroring it, you're breaking the group that it currently has. That's fine. And now basically what I can do is just delete the extras. So first of all, I no longer need this model line. So let's delete it. Number 2, I have a duplicate of these cylinders because again, remember I had one in the beginning and then I did a mirror on top. So I can come here and tab, select one of them, delete. The last member of a group instance was excluded, deleted, remove, or move to the project. Group instance has been deleted. That's fine. I don't necessarily need these guys to be a group. There you go. Same thing. Delete. Same warning. It's fine. And then basically I'm going to delete all of the ones that would disappear basically behind the clipping. So, oh God, this gets a little bit hard to see. Yes. It's fine if this guy's clipping a little bit. Delete it. Gorgeous. And then same thing here, there. And this is the reason why I basically had them in quadrants. I had it started here, started there. So that way, basically this guy is at the midpoint. And basically what I can do with this particular guy here is just do a linear array. So that is going to be much easier. So on group, there, that's all I needed. And now I can do my array. Perfect. So now I'm going to do a linear array. And this is going to be a first and second because now I know that this is an inch in diameter. And basically all I need to do is say, okay, so we're going to copy it in that direction, a distance of 1 inch. Enter. See? And now all I need to do is say how many items does the array have. I think 20 should be enough for this one. Ooh, way too much. Let's have it stop here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so 13 maybe? Yes. Okay, there we have it. That is our detail. Wow, that's looking very pretty. And again, once we've done all of this, the other thing that we can do is just edit it to cut this guy here, which is fine. It's not ideal, it's not what I wanted, but it is sometimes the way the cookie crumbles. So let's cut it there. Let's cut it here. And basically, or you know what, even better, let's be more careful because clearly this guy's giving me some issues. So I'm gonna do that. And then I'm gonna pick this line here and I'm gonna go with my trim. There you go. And because it's an array, this should apply to all of them. Let's see, finish. And there you go. It's not ideal. I don't love it, but you know, it's better than having to keep like the full clip. And then I can, for example, fix this one in particular. So maybe I can do join with this one guy. Yep, it did let me try again now. Again, Revit sometimes causes so much trouble. I think it might be because of these guys here that are causing all of this confusion. So you know what, maybe, how do I want to do this? Maybe what we do, let's unjoin that guy. I still need to fix these other guys here. See, these guys are different because they're like straight. So for these guys here, if I go, let's say, I'm going to go here to this guy, double click. Let's pick the group, instance, visible and ungroup. So if I, let's go, oh, double click. Nope, there you go. So if I go with this guy, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to trim it here. But this time my line can be straight. So we're just going to put it there. And then we're going to go same trim. Beautiful. I can just copy it again. So we said array of first, last, yes. And we said that is just 1 inch. And we said, I think it was like 13. Okay, that's fine. Yes, 13. Wow, good memory. Okay, so that is looking a little bit better in general. This one's a little bit messed up because it should be one of these, not one of these, but I'm going to leave that for the time being. It's a very small detail. I don't think anyone is going to notice. And then I think what may help solve the issue that we're having is changing the height, because I think part of the problem may be the way that these guys are clipping into this geometry. So what I can do is instead have these cylinders just be shorter. So let's try that out. Let's see if that solves all of my problems. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all of these guys. Yeah, those are the ones giving me a hard time. And this is my quadrant one, right? Like if I bring my model line back here, yeah, that's my quadrant one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group this. I want this just to be a geometry, because basically what I want to do is I want to change the height of this one. See, so it starts there. There you go. That's kind of what I want. And then I'm going to do the array. And I wonder if that is going to help fix whatever the hell is going on. So we're going to go array, and we're going to do exactly the same thing that we did before. This is going to be radial. This is going to be last. This is going to be placed on the, oh crap, I lost it. I need to draw my model line there. Okay, so now I can select this guy and do my array. We're going to place it here, and it's going to be first and second because I can kind of see where they begin and end. So I'm just going to put it there. There you go. And then how many do we need? 10, 15. Perfect. Okay. It contains multiple, that's fine. Yes. So now I no longer need the model line. Delete that. Okay. These should make things a little bit easier. Okay. So that is going to be for this section here. That's actually looking really, really nice. And what I want to do next is, if you remember, what I had in my reference image is that we have this kind of like display element, and I wanted to do that here. So instead of being solid, it's like one shelf and then another shelf. So what we can do here is basically we're going to do voids. So if you remember, voids are forms that are going to be extracted from an existing form. Everything that we have been doing so far has been addition. Now we're going to do subtraction. So once again, you can do this in any direction that you want. So for example, if I would want it to be kind of like this, you can see that it's kind of like cutting straight into the form, or if I would want it to wrap around the shape. So just to demonstrate the change in direction, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make my cut be just kind of like a pill, but like vertical, so to speak. So again, that implies the fact that I am going to change perspective. I'm going to change my work surface, because if you go to create and you turn on your work plane, you can see that indeed we have been working on the floor this entire time. That's not what I want to do this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to set my work plane, and I'm going to say that I want to pick a plane. This is much easier than creating reference planes and then assigning them. Again, I only do that like reference plane and assign if I'm working with something that is completely suspended or detached from any existing geometry. Otherwise, existing surfaces are the easiest work planes to work with. There you go. See? So now that basically means that anything I create is going to be on this surface. So what I'm going to do here is I could change here now my view. So see, now the floor plan is not very useful to me. So if I would want to work with an elevation, I would have had to create a preventive section, because now if I just go to like, what would this be? The east elevation. If I go to the east elevation, you're going to see that all I'm going to see is my walls because I didn't cut through it. So in this case in particular, I'm actually going to turn off my 2D view, and I prefer to work directly in 3D because I can just come here and say, I want to go to the right side view. There you go. And see, this is going to give me a nicer idea of what I'm working with. And once again, if I want to, I could use model lines to help me kind of like plan where I'm going to be putting things, but I'm just going to go and model it directly. So I want to keep that pill concept. And also, like, if you look at the concept here, you can see that like you basically have a carving. So that's basically what I'm going to recreate, this carving here. And you can see that it is also a little bit pill shaped. It's rounded on the edges. So I'm going to kind of recreate that. So instead of going with an extrusion, remember an extrusion is going to add, I'm going to go with a void. So I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to go with void extrusion, and I'm going to start just with a regular rectangle. Now, the other thing that I would like to remind you is that you don't necessarily have to have your extrusions or your geometry be a single geometry per extrusion. So basically I can make all of the openings that I want if I want to. Now, before I go forward, I want to make sure that, see like how this is going into where the curve is starting. I want to actually move this guy so it is aligned with whatever would be like the beginning of my radius. See, like if I put it there, yeah, that looks like that's where my circle begins. Perfect. And then I can come back here. And again, you have all of your temporary dimensions that you could use. So for example, let's say, how high do I want this to be? I want it to be at least 2 inches from the top. And then I want this, I want 2 of them. So let's say that this guy is going to be 8 inches, maybe. Yes. Okay, that looks about right. Here, it's not giving me the temporary dimension for this because remember, we kind of had them merged together. So it doesn't really know where I would want it to snap into. Right? Keep that into consideration. Sometimes when you merge geometry, it can create these situation where Revit doesn't know how you want the interactions to go, but you can move your temporary dimensions to help Revit understand. Same thing with this guy. I could come here and say that I want to bring it here to that edge, bring it here. Oh, it's not going to pick up on the edge. You know what? Let me put it here and then put that guy. It's not going to let me pick up. That's fine. So I'm going to come here and then we're going to round it up with the same fillet. There you go. There you go. There we go, and there we go. And I want to round it. So if it's 8 inches tall, then it would be 4 inches. Go. That looks good enough. And now I'm gonna make another copy because I want to have more than one of them. There you go. And we're gonna put this guy here. It's a little bit high, but that's fine. Maybe I can move it. Do I want to move it? No, I don't want to move it. There you go. So this is gonna be my profile, right? And now when I say yes, it's going to cut in. So I'm going to unjoin these elements for the time being. So basically it's telling me that like, it doesn't know what's going to happen when it starts intersecting. See, like it doesn't know how to cut through these slats here, which is fine because I don't actually want it to go that far. See, it's going way too deep. So instead what I want is I want it to stop here where this edge is. So I can pick this up and bring it there. And now when we look around, wow, look how pretty that looks. Let's say that I want to do the same thing on this guy here so I can replicate this detail that we have for the signage. I'm not going to recreate like the whole whatever the hell that part is, but I do like the kind of like perforation. So let's replicate that. So again, start by setting up your work plane. Now we're going to be working on this surface here. So I start by setting up that as my work plane. See, you can't quite see it, but it is there. Can I select the work plane? Yes. So if you cannot quite see the work plane, you can use your tab key to select it and then you can extend it. There you go. See? Now it's a little bit easier to understand what you're looking at. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Yeah, beautiful. I don't need to see this work plane anymore, so I can check things out. That's looking gorgeous, if I may say so myself. Okay, perfect. So now, to add a little bit more complexity and just show a few more things that you can do, so not everything has to be extrusions, let's do a sweep. I absolutely love working with sweeps. So let's say, first of all, if you remember, I was talking about the fact that you have here a reveal. So there's 2 ways that you could have done that reveal. One option is that you could have just basically the same way that I did with this guy, that like my slats start a little bit above. I could make it so all of these geometries start 1 inch above and then model basically what would be the base. Or the other way that you can do it is you can do a void sweep. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to sketch the path. So I'm going to go sketch path. and I'm gonna pick the edges. I always like to start when I do this with a straight line because then it's gonna make it a little bit easier to see that profile and how it connects. There you go, see? So now all I need to do is select all of my edges. Here I have an extension. Don't worry, we're gonna use trim to fix that. There you go. See, so here we can go trim, beautiful. Remember, same rules apply. It has to be continuous. And now all I need to do is kind of like draw my profile. So I can come back here to my path. I'm going to say I'm done drawing my path. And I'm going to say that I want to edit my profile. So I want to draw my profile. And my profile is going to be pretty straightforward. I don't want to overcomplicate it because it's like really small. It's 1 inch. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle. Not everything has to be overly designed. And all I'm going to do is make sure that the height is 1 inch and that the depth is 1 inch as well. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And now check it out. We're going to go say yes, yes, et voila. See? Wow, that looks so pretty. Oh my, great. Let's say now other touches that I want to give it. I want to create a little area here where this is actually going in. So I can have, for example, in an iPad for payment and whatnot. So I don't want this entire thing to just go to the top. So once again, it's going to be a void. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by setting up my work plane. So again, show, set, pick plane. This time I'm going to go from the top. And again, if you find that the workplane preview that you're getting is too big, you can always adjust it. Again, Revit can be very annoying to work with. I'm not going to lie to you and butter you up. Like, it is true. But also Revit is very customizable. So like if something is bothering you, just change it. You can always change things that you don't like. There you go. So see, now I can come here and say, we are going to create a void extrusion. And that void extrusion is going to be a rectangle that, let's say, goes from here to there. And I want it to be something like that. That should be enough for a pay station. And this one, because we said that this was 42, usually like if the person is going to be standing, the most comfortable would be 36. So that means from 42 to 36, that's 6 inches, I think. So we're going to find out 6 inches and we're going to say, okay. And there you go. Again, if you see this orange, it basically means that Revit doesn't understand how you want this geometries to interact. So if that happens, don't worry. You're just going to go to modify and you're going to go cut and you're going to say this guy, this guy. There you go. See, now it understands what you want it to do. Yeah, that looks fine to me. And then the last thing that I wanted to do, if you remember, I did mention the fact that I wanted to have a little bit of these kind of like ledge on top. So let's say that you're not going to see this entire cavity and instead there's going to be a little like ledge of wood or something coming in here. So once again, you can choose whatever work plane you want to draw this. If you want to draw it from the top and you extrude down, if you want to draw it on the side, if you want to draw it on the front. I wanted to have a rounded edge to keep this like pill concept that we have been developing for this guy. So once again, I am going to start by turning on and setting up my work plane. And now I can come here and this is going to be an extrusion. And it's just going to be a little rectangle, something like that. So for the length of the rectangle, let's make it 6 inches, not too long. For the depth of the rectangle, 1 inch is more than enough. And then we're just going to round it at the edges. That's why I did it on this side, because I wanted to have those rounded edges. If it would have been straight, I could have drawn it from the top. I could have drawn it from the back and it would make no difference. So when you are choosing which direction you're drawing things from, you do need to think about like what is the nature of the profile, depending constraint, delete element. Yes, depending on the nature of the element that you're drawing, you may have to choose one side versus the other. And then here I can just extend this guy until it gets there. And there you have it. This guy is quite pretty, quite complex. I like it. Once you're happy, you can finish your model. I'm gonna save, and there we go. How pretty. Wow. And now basically you're just gonna do that as many times as you have to for all of your different millwork.